Hi, I'm Jeff Stark. Thanks for joining me on the third video of a series of videos that I've titled Addiction. Um, I'm compiling these videos regarding this particular subject because it's been one that's been very pertinent and very relevant for my own life. I grew up in an alcoholic home with all the various dysfunction, sinful things that can happen in those homes. I learned very early on in junior high that if I was in pain, difficulty, or if I just wanted to have a good time, I found that drinking alcohol was a way of dealing with sadness, and I found it to be a way to deal with pain. And so in junior high, I started drinking, and over a decade or more, couple of decades, I would say that I became an alcoholic, a functional alcoholic, I should say, but nonetheless an addicted alcoholic. And eventually, by God's grace, I have been able now to say that I've been sober for probably about 20, 25 years, something like that. It was a long struggle, but God was very instrumental, obviously, in helping me to go from being a drunkard, if I want to speak of it in terms of 1 Corinthians 13, to one who now is sober. And I thank God for that. But there was a lot to learn along the way. And these set of videos are some things that I've learned along the way. They're going to be short, they're going to be somewhat random and not in any particular kind of order. But they are going to be insights that I gained the hard way that were absolutely crucial to my turning the corner and eventually being done with it and becoming sober. So I hope these videos will be helpful to you as well. Already there's been two, and this is number three. And so let's get started. One of the things on looking back that I came to understand in a very personal way was that an alcoholic or someone who has an addiction, I should say, doesn't have to be an alcohol addiction. It could be a porn addiction, pornographic addiction, a gambling addiction, cocaine addiction, addiction to lying, all kinds of various addictions. But what accompany someone who's in the throes of an addiction is usually a lot of lying to others. There might be, where were you? And you lied. And how much did you have to drink? And you lie. And where did you get it? And you lie. And is there any hiding around the house? And you lie. And lying after decades of lying. Lying accompanies addictions all the time. But there is another kind of a lying that takes place that is very profound, and I want to just take a very brief time today to tell you my story about this particular form of lying and deception. Is what I would say the lying and deception that I was applying to myself. Or in other words, I found that I was deceiving myself in some very profound ways. And if God had not intervened to help me to understand that, I would probably still be an alcoholic today. So what do I mean by that? In terms of my own life, I'd like to give you a story, an illustration. At one point in my cutting back in my drinking, I had determined with God and made a promise that if given the opportunity to drink at a party, a pool party, a beach party, a birthday party, or wherever alcohol would be, that I would go into that and I'd say, well, this is all I'm going to drink. I know I usually can drink too much, but here's all that I'm going to drink. I'm only going to drink this much. But having gone to that party and woken up the next day, I realized on multiple occasions I just stepped over the line again. If I drew the line at 2, the next day I would find out that I had 3 or 4 or 5, and I was very sad about that, very angry at myself for doing that. I also realized eventually, this is not for the purpose of this video, but I would go into drinking with a line of having 2, but having had 2, something would happen to my thinking where my resolve to only have 2, my resolve began to diminish, and moving on to number 3 and number 4 and number 5 was very easy to do. But we'll get to that for another video. But there was one very defining moment in this struggle that I had regarding to self-deception that I'm going to tell you about right now. One evening I'd gone to a pool party with with my family, I had resolved to only have two particular kinds of drinks. And again, after two, I ended up having three and maybe four. And I woke up the next morning early. I was alone and I was out on my deck. It was a nice day. And I remember walking to the end of my deck. And I remember thinking about the night before and many times before that where I'd said I was going to only have two and I had more than that. And I was feeling very guilty about that. And I was also feeling very, very angry at myself. And I remember this, this was a defining time on my deck on that morning after, but something happened. I remember crying out. To myself, I think it was to myself, I hate this. Why do I keep doing this? I hate this. I hate this. It's happened again. And I remember just being very angry and very frustrated with myself and crying out that, why do I keep doing this? I hate this. And it was at that moment, it was like a light bulb went on. It just bing, something happened. It was very important to me. It was very important in terms of my being able to turn a corner, and that is suddenly I began to realize something very, very true, and it was, I don't hate this. We don't do things that we hate. We really do things that we love. We stop things that we hate. We despise it. We walk away from it. We run from it. We flee from it. We stomp on it. Those are things, that's what we do to things that we hate. But the things that we love, we keep going back to because we love them. So here I am on my deck lamenting the fact that I did it again. Well, why do I keep doing this? I hate this. And then suddenly you realize to me, you know what, Jeff? You don't hate this. You actually love what you did last night. You love that third drink. You love that fourth drink. You don't hate it. You love it, because if you hate it, you wouldn't do it. So it's time to get really honest with yourself. The reason you keep going back to doing this is because you don't hate it. You actually love it. Now that was a remarkable moment for me. That was a divine moment. For many decades, I was lamenting the fact of doing something that I hated. But you know what? God was very gracious to me to show me the truth. I had deceived myself in thinking that I was doing something that I hated. The truth was I kept doing it because I really loved it. And that was a very eye-opening moment for me. And it made a lot of sense. Of course, now I know why I keep doing this. It's not because I hate it. It's because I love it. And I've been fooling myself for many years thinking that I hate doing this, but when in reality, truth was, no, you don't do things that you hate. You do things that you love. And I kept doing this because I kept stepping over that line because I love the drink. And so that was truth expelling falsehood and lying that had never happened before. And it was a defining moment because I never went back again to saying that I hated it. God showed me that I loved it, and I was going to continue to love it as long as I continued to do it. Now, I have to be honest with you. I continued to drink after that. That didn't stop my drinking, but it did stop my deceiving and lying to myself that I really hated what I was doing. So two things happened that was very important for me on that particular morning. Number one was I stopped deceiving myself. And I stopped saying to myself, I hate this, when I really did love it. A second thing that became apparent to me is what is said to us in the book of Romans. And I should have my Bible open to Romans right now. I actually started to do that before we started. But let me see if I can find it really quickly. I know I can quote it. I believe it's in Romans chapter 12. It is when God says in Verse 9. There you go. Verse 9 says this, love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. And I realized that I didn't hate what was evil and cling to what is good. But in this matter, I was clinging to what was evil and I was hating what was good. So the second thing that I began to realize was that God wanted me to hate what is evil and cling to what is good, but I was not doing that. So I got honest. I realized that I was loving what was evil and hating what was good, and something had to change. And the third thing that changed as a result of that morning was this. It changed my prayers. my prayers started to change. Now I began to cry out to God and say, God, now I understand I really love what is evil and hate what is good. And I don't know what to do about that. I'm going to really, really need your help. I thank you for showing me the truth. The truth is very painful. But now I'm crying out to you and asking you to teach me, learn me, help me to learn how to hate what is evil and cling to what is good, so that I can be done with this problem once and for all. My prayers started to change, and now I knew what I needed to work on. I knew what God, through the Holy Spirit and the Scriptures, needed to help me to do, and that was, okay, I hate what's evil, Lord, and I want to ask you to teach me that I would learn to go through that transition of instilling my truth in me so that I would indeed hate what is evil, but that I would cling to what is good. And that did indeed help me to eventually turn the corner to being done with my addiction once and for all. But that was a very clear defining moment for me, as I suspect it might be for many of you as well. I had indeed lied to others. I wasn't lying, I was deceiving them. They didn't know a lot about the truth that was going on in me, but I was deceiving myself, and that was a very important moment for me. When I saw the truth, it changed my prayers, and eventually, as I asked God to help me to hate what was evil and cling to what was good, He did help me to do that, and we'll probably get into that in future videos. This is a 7-minute video, which was outlining for you. This is video number 3. But it was a very defining moment for me. And I hope that it might be a defining moment for you, that it might show you what is really true and what is not, what is false, and help you to change your prayers and set you on a very different course, as it did me. So, thanks for being with me today.